I am from a small town in Appalachia, with a population of less than 7,000. There are about 80 people in my high school class, and people are generally very trusting. This story took place early last September, and I was 20 years old at the time. I'm a male, and had just entered my junior year of college, about 3 hours from my hometown. In high school, I had a close cohort of friends. There were about 8 of us that were very close. As things go, things changed when we went to our respective colleges. I fell out of touch with many of them, but I did retain contact with a couple of them. The ones featuring in this story are Mac and Devin. Last September, I got a call from my mother telling me the news. Devin's father had been killed in an accident on his way to work. It was a sudden but brutal collision involving a semi. Devin's family was not from the area. They had moved to my town during high school because her father had gotten a job there. Having no family and a dispersed set of friends, she didn't have many people to lean on during this time. Matt contacted me and wanted to know whether I planned on attending the funeral, which had been planned for Friday morning. I had an important class Friday afternoon, but I told him that I would come up that evening and we could occupy Devin. Mac made the 6-hour drive from his college to attend the funeral, and I made it into town later that evening. We decided the 3 of us would spend a few hours at Mac's house. We were just going to hang out, and Mac and I were determined to preoccupy Devin. I got there around 6, and we jumped right into it. We talked about college, we watched Netflix, and we played board games. Despite the circumstances, it was a pretty good night. I got up to leave about a half hour after midnight, and after some tearful goodbyes, I got in my car. Now for a little geography. Mac's house is a little more than a mile away from my parents' house. There are no red lights and only one stop sign. At that time of night, I could make the trip in less than 2 minutes. Being in a rural part of Appalachia, though, the roads were far from straight. In fact, Mac's house was just off a windy 2-lane road. There were several blind curves that stop you from seeing what's coming up ahead, and there are no guardrails or streetlights to speak of. So I start off on what I thought would be a brief, uneventful journey home. I pull out of his driveway and start on my way. I start into the first blind curve, and am greeted by something entirely unexpected. I see the car first. It is a white, older model sedan. It is half in my lane and half in a culvert. I have to quickly swerve to avoid hitting it, and I notice a figure waving his arms as I slam on the brakes. I end up stopped on the side of the road. There is no shoulder, so my car is sitting in the road and in the grass about 100 feet past his car. At this point, I should have kept going and called the police for help when I got home, but this is not what I did. I avoided that feeling in my gut, put my car in park, and opened my door. I stepped outside and immediately noticed the damage to the vehicle. The front end had serious damage. There were no cars around, so I concluded the driver must have collided with the cliffside on the other side of the road. It is really dark though, so I have a hard time figuring out exactly what happened. By the red light emitted from my taillights, I see the figure approaching me. "Hey buddy, I need some help." "What happened? Is there someone you'd like me to call?" "No, I tried to call my brother, but he didn't answer. He lives just up the road." "Oh, do you want me to call the police?" "No, you can't call the police. I just need my car pulled out of there." He points into the culvert. "I need someone with a truck. My brother has one." He's walking closer to me, and I am beginning to make out some of his features. He is a little bit shorter than me, but he easily has 75 pounds on me. At this point, the lack of light left me unable to discern much else, except that he was wearing a baseball cap. "Well, I don't have a truck, so I guess I can't help you." I was beginning to feel very uncomfortable. He kept approaching me, and there was something wrong in his voice. A flatness, like he was not emotional at all about the predicament he was in. I started to walk backwards towards my car door. "Drive me to my brother's house. He lives just up the road." He points in the opposite direction of my home as he walks towards my passenger side. "I have to get home. My family is expecting me." This is a lie. They have all been asleep for hours, and I was still at Mark's house as far as they knew. "It'll just take a minute. He lives on Road. His house is only about a mile away." He keeps progressing. My heart is racing, but I am in a strange predicament. I want to get the hell out of there, but there isn't an ideal way to do it. My car doors are unlocked, and he's getting very close to my car. Even if I was as fast as possible, I couldn't get in and lock the door before he at least opened one of the doors on the other side. I certainly couldn't put it in drive and pull away before he at least had some of himself in the passenger seat. Seeing as he was going to get in my car if he wanted to, I decided to go the cordial route. If this was going to happen, it was going to happen on my terms. I knew Road. My sister's boyfriend lived there, and I knew that it was less than a mile from where I currently sat. It was a one-lane holler, as we colloquially refer to a hollow. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe I was about to do a good deed. "Okay, get in." He sits down in my passenger seat about the time I make it into my driver's seat. Since the doors were open, my car's interior lights were on, and this was the first good look I had at him. He was older than me, probably in his late 40s, and he was dirty, very dirty. His hands were greasy, his shirt was full of holes, and there were literally flies congregating around him. My car instantly smelt like body odor and bodily fluids, if you catch my drift. I experienced immediate regret. This was a horrible idea. My parents had taught me about this. My mother was a true crime junkie, and she would always warn me about situations like this. He closes his door, and the lights go out. I make a U-turn and start heading towards Road. He insists on talking to me, although I would much prefer the hum of the radio. He asks me my name, and where I live, and what I do. I evade every question that I deemed too personal, for I did not want him knowing too much about me. I begin to get the distinct feeling that something is wrong with him. He speaks void of emotion or any kind of inflection. Sometimes he has a hard time even getting the words out. I conclude that he is either on a mind-altering substance, there is a serious prescription drug abuse issue in the area, or he is playing with less than a full deck of cards. We are turning on the road when he begins admiring my car. It was a fairly nice, foreign car that my parents bought for me for my 16th birthday. He is rubbing the dashboard with his greasy hand before he starts pushing buttons, both on the car and deep in my psyche. "This is a nice car. A really nice car. I'd kill to have a car like this." I kid you not. He literally said he would kill for my car. I didn't immediately take it as a threat, as there was absolutely no emotion in the statement, and it was a common turn of phrase. Nevertheless, I was getting very uncomfortable. My sister's boyfriend's house is barely in sight, and I am so worked up that I decide I'm going to stop there. I'm pretty sure I could get a few beats in on the door before this guy attacks me for not taking him to his brother's place. As I approach his driveway, my heart sinks. There are no cars there, and there isn't a garage. No one was home. I am on my own. As we pass the driveway, he says something that catches me off guard. His house is about a mile up ahead. I thought his house was a mile from your car. No, it's a mile from here. Okay. I keep driving, but look at my odometer. I'm giving him 1 mile. That's it. We drive in silence, for which I am grateful. He's still fondling my dashboard, but I figure I can ignore that. We go about 3/4 of a mile further up this desolate hollow when I ask him how much further. I think he can tell I'm getting irritated and scared by this point. Just that way. Turn right. I stop in the middle of an abandoned road. He is pointing to a gravel road on my right. It is barely wide enough for my car, and it shoots steeply up a mountain. He lives a mile up that road. Go that way. There was no way I was about to drive further into this desolate place when it seemed as if he was making up directions as we went. There was no sign of life up there, and we had already gone farther than he had originally said. No, that's as far as we go, I say to him. Get out. No. Come on, man. We're almost there. Just turn up that way. I look around, and I have limited options when it comes to a weapon. In fact, I have one option. The previous winter had been a bad one, so I kept a brush/ice scraper combo in my floorboard. It was plastic, but decently heavy, and the scraper part had a sharp edge. I casually pick it up and sit it in my lap. No! Get out! He was very reluctant. My makeshift weapon, and the fact that I was literally in the driver's seat, caused him to swing his door open. The lights instantly came on, and he turned to look at me squarely in the face. He was grinning, and his teeth looked as if he hadn't seen a dentist since before I was born. Please? This was the first time anything he said had any inflection at all. He said it as if he was trying to sound pitiful, but it came off as mocking. No, I said sternly, and he began to get out of the car. He was in the process of closing the door when he said one more thing. He leaned into the open door and said, I really like your car. He slammed the door, and I took off. It was a 1-lane road, so I couldn't immediately go the direction that I needed to. I went up a couple of 100 feet and turned around in someone's driveway. When I approached where I had left him, I see that he had made no progress up the gravel road towards his brother's house. In fact, it doesn't look like he moved at all. I slowed down when I get closer to him. I don't want to risk this man jumping in front of me or anything. He stares at me as I pass, and I floor it. As I drove away, I could barely make out that he had started to walk. Not up the mountain, not further into the hollow, but toward the way I had driven, toward the main road. The wrecked car was still there when I drove by, obviously, and I went straight home and laid in my bed, too terrified to sleep. I don't know what he had planned, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't driving him to his brother's house. I worked as a police officer in the UK between the ages of 19 and 24. I am now 26, and I'm male. I left for personal reasons not connected to this story. One late shift, about 2 years ago from now, I was posted to the dairy car. Essentially, I was to deal with scheduled appointments for low-level non-urgent crime. It was a bit of a bum posting, but we all had to take turns in it to free up the rest of the guys for emergencies. The key thing with this posting is that it's for one officer only, so I was alone. I got to my 8 p.m. appointment, which was at a mental health hospital, a place that I, and most other officers, go to nearly every week. This is because patients under section abscond regularly, and the hospital has to report it to the police as protocol. 9 times out of 10, they return of their own free will, perfectly safe and well. Tonight I was sent to debrief a patient who had returned. Essentially, I have to make sure they are back and that they are safe, and nothing bad happened to them whilst they were missing. That kind of thing. I'd like to add that I have a phobia of the mentally ill, particularly women. I hate going to this hospital, and it never got any easier for me, but I had to do my job. This hospital is old and creeps the hell out of me, from the outside anyway. It has dark brown brickwork, huge windows, and what looks like a bell tower rising from the center. It looks like an old church building. Essentially, it looks like an asylum from a horror movie. I thought I might share a photo of it, but it is very distinct and would give away the story's location, so I'm not sure I can. I went inside and presented myself to reception, who escorted me onto the ward through 2 locked doors, opened by staff electronic fobs. It's very clinical and white inside, smells of bleach and alcohol, like most hospitals, so nothing like the outside. I get into the ward office and speak to the staff nurse. She gives me all the details I need, but in doing so, as per usual, I had been spotted by half the patients on the ward already. This office is locked, but is in the center of the ward. I called it the Goldfish Bowl, because every wall has a continuous window going all the way around, and it's like looking out of a fishbowl. The uniform I'm in is a massive draw for the patients, and they all surround the glass and start tapping on it and shouting things at me. Reminds me a bit of The Walking Dead, but I'm used to it. It happens every time I show up here. I need to speak to Mary, though, the patient who returned, so I know I have to walk through all of them. I don't like it, but 2 members of staff come with me, and we walk through. No one touches me, just a few unkind words, but eventually, we get to Mary's room. The door is open, and I look in before entering, to see Mary sitting on a bed. I don't recognize her, and I'm sure I haven't dealt with her before. She had dark blonde hair, fairly long. It was really greasy, and hadn't seen a brush in a while. I knew from the details I was given that she was 25 years old. She sat on the bench hunched over, and head bowing down. She was wearing a t-shirt about 5 sizes too big for her, but I couldn't see anything on the bottom. But the t-shirt was big enough that it covered everything. I said hello and explained why I was there, that I needed to ask her a few short questions, whilst reassuring her that she was not in any kind of trouble. She said nothing. The staff members I was with then had to leave, as something was going on with another patient. I went to step into the room with Mary, and she screamed at me, "No, don't! I stayed outside the room, as I could just speak with her from behind the threshold of the door, without causing her any unnecessary distress, or me for that matter. She then turned her head to look at me. I know she was unwell, but she looked terrible. Her lips were chapped, and she had sores on her face that had obviously been picked at. I could now see that she had self-harm scars down her arms too, and lots of them. Her eyes were so dark, I could not make out her pupils. Really chilling eyes, like a deep sadness, but also something very sinister. I'm uncomfortable, but I hide it and go to ask my questions. She interrupts me and says sharply, "I know why you're here." I assume she had had debriefs before, and she knows the system by now. And then she said this, "You're here to kill me, James. He sent you, and now you've come." She referred to me by my first name. This shocked me. It's common for an officer's rank, surname, and shoulder number to be given out, but never their first name. Not even to hospital staff, let alone patients. I don't know what to say. I want to ask her how she knows my name, but then I hesitate and think to myself, don't let on that that's your name. She continues before I have a chance to say anything. "I'm not letting you take me, James. I will kill you because you will kill me." She then screams very loudly. I'm frozen. I've dealt with a lot of shit in my job, but this was truly terrifying for me. Still sitting on the bed, but looking at me, she then rolls her eyes back so I can only see white, and with her long overgrown fingernails, she starts scratching violently at her arms and face. Blood is drawn instantly. I'm still not reacting. This is by far and large the freakiest thing I've had to witness in the line of duty. Luckily the nurses heard, and came over and restrained her, and suggested that I may want to leave to help her calm down. I did so immediately. This interview was very much over. As I walked down the corridor, I could still hear her screaming my name. Someone let me out, and I walked back to my vehicle, got in the driver's seat, and took a few minutes. I was shaking. I could still hear her screaming my name inside of my head. She was Shutter Island kinda crazy, and I remember her vividly to this day. All of this went into my report, by the way. So how did she know my name? I'm really not sure. My name isn't James. It's less common than that, so I ruled out it being a complete coincidence. The only rational thing I can think of is that being a regular visitor, I must have been with a colleague who had said my name on a previous occasion. She must have heard it and remembered. This scares me, but it's the only way. Surely. Needless to say, I would check on her from time to time to see if she had absconded again. She did a couple of times, but eventually went off the radar. Perhaps transferred or released. I don't know. I still have nightmares about her coming to kill me, though. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share the video with your friends. I hope you all have a great weekend, and just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.